This is a close-up of a bad painting, and this is not. In this video, I'll help explain the differences. Every leaf, every stick, every twig, every blade of grass, every notch in every tree trunk and every lump of texture. How do we get this visual complexity, this visual vitality into an oil painting? Well, it's the eternal dilemma, isn't it? How to get detail into art, into painting. What I'm about to show you may be absolute rubbish, complete nonsense. I don't know. I'm not a scientist, don't pretend to be. But it certainly explains a solution that I achieve using advanced techniques. And the solution, I think, resides within the paint surface itself, within the structure of the actual paint, which is determined by how you put it on. And that's the difference. So let's say you got your canvas and you turn it side on, so you're looking at the edge of it, which means you stand here as a viewer and you're now looking at the face of the painting this way. We're now going to apply some paint like that. And that little mark where the brush was represents a stroke of paint. Now, as light comes towards the painting, it hits that stroke of paint and reflects back, and you see that colour. And that happens in all the different places on the canvas with different colours. Now, with a normal painting, where you're applying single strokes of colour, that's all you see, nothing more than that. The technical skill involved in doing that, even though it looks spectacular at the end, is absolutely basic. Now let me show you something special, because there's a whole lot more that can happen very, very easily. Now with different colours, as we just said, in different places, that's all you're going to see. So let's get excited. We've now got different colours on different places on the canvas. It all changes when we make those strokes transparent. Not fully transparent, there's some colour in it, because what happens is this: the light comes down and hits the colour at the back, bounces back out towards you, and hits that colour from behind. So it's lit from within, and the difference is like when you look at a photograph and it's a sort of flat plane of colour. But when you get a slide, in the old days, I don't know if young people still know anything about these, but a slide is a transparency in true colour. And when you hold it up, the light from behind lights it from within, and it glows and it's luminous. So already we've got a different quality happening when a stage is applied on top of the painting itself, on top of the background paint or the canvas, and is lit from within. But also what happens is that it's picking up the colour that was behind it. So you've got that colour plus the transparent colour coming out at you. So you're getting a multiplicity of blends. The specific colour, the background colour, and variances of the two. And it changes again when you increase or decrease the degree of transparency. So you're getting a whole lot of variances again. Now, what you can also do is apply an opaque colour. You might do 20 stages. Imagine the complexity of just 20 stages, let alone 100, or even 3. Remember, this background is what everybody else paints. That's it. One plane. We've now got all these different combinations of effects occurring as light does its thing through the journey of arriving on the painting and coming back to you, the viewer. And if we stop the process at this point with an opaque colour, which can itself be varied, then you're starting a whole new series of effects, and it will be brighter again. Can you see already how incredibly complex advanced techniques are compared to the basic stuff, which is just, I mean, you know, I call it boring and disappointing and so forth. But the reason why I keep harping on about this is that people with incredible talent, very, very gifted people, know only 3 techniques. The techniques aren't taught. You don't get them in art school, and you don't get them from art class, and if you don't know them, you default to the 3 techniques which are basic, which is common knowledge. Now there are 12 techniques, and all these different effects, and the combinations of effects that happen. So I get upset because the gifted people are driving around on a little lawnmower, little 4-cylinder thing going blah, 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 when they could be driving Ferraris and Lamborghinis in power, you know? Fighter jets, just incredible, astronomical bloody missiles and what do you call those things where people get in and go to the moon? Those things. Forgotten what they are. Anyway, a monkey masturbated in one of them. That's the sort of thing I'm talking about. Well, I shouldn't really say that. And the other reason too is that the average person who doesn't think they're gifted or talented, but wants to enjoy it, using only 3 techniques is really only going to prove their premise that they're not gifted or talented. Whereas if they've got this knowledge, which is super simple, because it all happens within the paint surface itself, then they can paint remarkable paintings. And that's why I go on about it. Colouring in, little brushes, all this sort of stuff. Complete lack of knowledge, dampening everybody's potential. Well, wouldn't you know it? What I just said about all of those effects and things, it's only the beginning of it. It's absolutely rudimentary because in my little diagram that I'm showing you, the brushstroke is flat. But there's a variance of technique as well that can change the nature of the paint surface. And so the paint can have hills and mountains texture that happens with a bristle brush stroke. Beautiful texture. There's your canvas, there's a stage, let's apply the brush. It leaves these hills and mountains, which means that there's angles of paint facing the viewer, which means that light comes in and hits various points in the angle, another angle here, as it comes out. So the complexity just in that process alone is incredible. Now technically, physically, what happens is the glaze goes into the valleys and forms a puddle, and as it comes back out, it gets lighter, 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 lighter until it comes to the top. And if you scrub your brush across the top, at a very microscopic level, what you're doing is scraping with the brush the paint from the tops of the mountains. So you get a gradation just with that simple application. And the gradation is it goes from light at the top of the mountain, darker, 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 darker into the dark valley where the medium has gathered more. And then it comes out lighter, 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 which means that we're getting at this very, very detailed level all of these gradations. The knife makes a different texture again, and so too does the rag. Awesome complexity. So you now have different stages of paint surface of different texture and different degrees of transparency. Some overlap, some don't. You have new foundations where the whole process starts again. So the paint surface is this incredible generator of visual vitality and visual power, creative power. So you're going to ask yourself, well, geez, this sounds pretty bloody complicated, you know, I can't do it. It's so much easier to have the techniques do the work for you than it is to try to force bad technique into creating something that is complex. It's all about the techniques, and it's all about the combination of them, and they create the complexity that we're talking about. So when I come back to this thing where people block in a colour, and they say, well, that's a mid-tone, right? And you go, wow, that's smart. And then they paint in a shadow. Ooh, geez, that's incredible. And then they put in lights. Oh, no. You know. And people are falling for it. You get a little brush and you dab it like this, see? See that? Little fan brush, bang on the corner. Wow, there's revelations. What bullshit. That is going to be the same wherever you go in the painting. It's not capturing the spirit. There's no energy in it. You know, come on. You know, it's just complete lack of knowledge, and it's really sad. And do I get angry? Of course I do. Because people miss out and people don't know the difference. Or, you know, the classic I go on about is a little brush trying to paint in detail. First thing they do is think, wow, I'm going to have to paint this leaf here and then this leaf here. You know, some people realise that's no good, so they do the block and end bullshit. Once you know your techniques, you're free then to feel the spirit of what it is that you're creating. Because mucking around with those basic things, you don't get to feel the spirit. It's only craft work. You're not feeling anything artistically. You might be assessing things artistically, but you're not feeling them, and you can't get that feeling in the stroke itself. Whereas when you use advanced techniques, you can feel the spirit of the sea, you can feel the strength of this trunk on its deep roots and all of the things that are happening when you do it. You know, this is what First Nations Australian people understand about the landscape and about life, is that it's all about the spirit of things, and we're connecting with this. So how simple is it? Well, you use unmixed paint and let it dry. You learn how to mix medium, make your own medium even if you want. I teach all this in art courses online. And now you've got solid paint and liquid paint, and you've also got opaque paint and transparent paint. And you're using the full physical gamut of what those qualities can achieve. Oil paint's phenomenal stuff. It can take a whole lot more than acrylic. You can't do to acrylic what I do with oil paint. You just can't do it. Physically can't take it. And on that very basic principle, the whole world opens up. So I guarantee if you see somebody saying, this is how you do it, and they're talking about little brush or blocking in mid-tones and then highlights and shadows and shit like this, and they're not talking the spirit, then it's really 2% the lawnmower power. And so it's very, very easy to learn those simple things. Easier than learning notes and chords in music, because you haven't got a time constraint. You don't have to get the timing right. And the other thing to look out for too in other videos is where they pre-mix a colour on the palette. You add a bit of this and it's going to be then that, and then you add a little touch, just a touch on the two, and you mix that together, and then you mix and mix and mix and mix and mix, and now you've got these little ponds of colour, these little puddles of colour paint on them, and oh look, this goes from this tone to this tone, you know, and there's a canvas sitting there waiting to get blasted, and you're pissing around with this sort of shit. And all of that is killing the energy and the vitality of what can happen on the canvas. So if you start to see people do that sort of stuff, at the start of a painting, their painting is not going to have the power in it. It's just not going to get power into it. Because going back to advanced techniques, You don't worry about colour when you put it on. You worry about what effect it will have when the other stages are applied to it. Totally different thing, which means you're totally free to really, as I say, power up a canvas. Colour happens as a result of the effects of light through the surface of the painting. Can you see the difference? This is why I get excited. Anyway, I've raved on a fair bit. Let me just say this though, it's not about painting like I do. That's not why I'm saying all these things. It's about having the knowledge, and when you've got the knowledge of the techniques and what they can do, then you've got the choice. So I'm not saying that you have to use all 12 techniques or paint my way. What I'm saying is that with knowledge of the techniques and the effects that they create naturally, they do it themselves, and with that choice, you then can say, I'm only going to use these techniques and not those because this suits my spirit, my vision, my expression of my vision. Or can get more sophisticated again and say, well, this subject means that I will only use these techniques and not those because that best expresses my vision as I feel the spirit of that subject. Or you can use all 12. So it's entirely up to you. You can use 1, 12, doesn't matter, but knowledge is power, and that's what it's all about. You choose the techniques you want to use, when you want to use them, and the combinations through the different stages of a painting, or even just keep it as one, but at least you're making knowledgeable choices at every stage. It's very cool, isn't it? It's really cool stuff. Spaceship, there you go, that's what that thing is, the monkey, you know, what I was talking about. Time to go, got to paint a picture. Getting old. Young people, take it on. So, how small are photons? I don't think people even know. I don't think they even know what they are. But they're smaller than microscopic, which means the different stages of the paint surface need only be 2 or 3 photons thick for the effect to occur, for this inner luminosity to occur. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if everything I've said isn't true at all. If there's no substance to it, I think there might be a little bit at least, but it doesn't matter because look at this. This is what everybody else tells you to do if you want to paint a picture. And everybody who looks at this, who doesn't know the difference, thinks it's brilliant. It looks like the human hand has put paint onto the canvas. It looks like the human hand is trying to pretend nature into existence. Whereas if you look at this is authentic advanced techniques. It looks like nature herself has created it. It looks like it has grown from nature. And that's a fundamental difference. It is also full of vitality, full of complexity, full of detail. And so the proof is in the result. The proof, as they say, is in the paint. And that's what matters to me. The result is there.